Hello and welcome back to another short news video for Final Fantasy XIV. This time I want to take a look at the before mentioned response on the Baldesion Arsenal from Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director for Final Fantasy XIV. This was posted on the official Final Fantasy XIV forums, and in particular there is no direct translation for this, but I have found a useful point-by-point translation. The key things to note include that they are planning on making content similar to this in the future, with adjustments to implementation as necessary. It turns out that Hydatos and indeed the Baldesion Arsenal, in their opinion, was a massive success. They received a lot of passionate feedback, more than they have for any other content in Final Fantasy XIV in the past 2 weeks, with a quite noticeable difference of opinions between the North American and European forums and that of the Japanese forums. The story relating to Baldesion Arsenal's clear, i.e. the cutscene where you get to make a choice, was hard to implement and was discussed amongst the developers heavily. Ultimately, Yoshida interpreted the ending to take place before the Baldesion Arsenal clear, with the events taking place after your clear of Baldesion Arsenal as a bonus rather than a true epilogue or ending. They apparently made the etheric stabilizer requirements harsh initially because they thought having too relaxed requirements would defeat the purpose of a priority ticket into Baldesion Arsenal. They have now seen that players do not use this as often as they intended, so they have made it easier to acquire in today's patch, of which you can see the details of in my previous video, which I'll link in the description. The original intent was to have the player pay a certain time cost for a guaranteed entrance into Baldesion Arsenal. They received a lot of feedback that the rewards for the support fate, Tristitia, spawned from inside Baldesion Arsenal were not actually worth it. In the hotfix, the rewards for this fate will now be greatly increased. They have also noticed that players are leaving the Ovni fate early in order to get to their portals more quickly. In particular, they noticed that players would pull it out of Notorious Monster range and reset it because of its rock hard attack. In response, they are considering, but this is not a live change yet, that they may delay the portal spawn until a few minutes after Ovni is defeated, as well as make sure that the buff is only obtained when staying within Ovni's Notorious Monster range when it is defeated. The support fate may also have the same blue unstable portals that spawn beforehand, instead of spawning only as red portals. And Yoshida's final point is that this is the content they wanted to deliver, the one they mentioned previously, content in an MMO that has never been experienced, etc. In particular, Yoshida was inspired by Diablo 2's hardcore mode and wizardry on the Famicom to make challenging content with unprecedented multiplayer. He also notes that if the player base has a big problem with content like this, that feedback is taken very seriously, presumably changing the way they develop things in the future. In general, I find today's patch and indeed the response from Yoshida to be slightly short-sighted as to the real issues here pertain to this content. Calling something a public open dungeon doesn't necessarily mean that it's possible to do outside of pre-made groups. To the recent video I made, portal sniping issue, this is only going to get much worse now that more people have access to the dungeon through these etheric stabilizers. GMs have already reportedly gone out and made a statement saying that intentionally screwing over other groups trying to do the Baldesion Arsenal is a bannable offense if evidence is provided. This is only going to get worse, and I don't believe any of the changes have really addressed this issue in today's patch. My advice for Square Enix would be to actually play test this themselves and to try and actually make a pug group themselves and see how many groups get offended when you try to take claim on portals, or take a portal for example that is already taken inverted commas by another group. It would be very interesting to see their reactions, and maybe they'd get a better understanding of this, but in general this is not the sort of response a lot of people were going to be wanting nor expecting. I think the actual dungeon itself is probably very well received and is an excellent experience, but getting in there is not the experience that people wanted. Either way, I'll link all of this in the description below so you can read through it yourself. There might have been a few points I've missed due to translation errors, but in general that's what this was all about. Either way, thank you kindly for watching, have a nice day, and I'll see you all next time.